Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Verity Podcast. A couple of podcasts ago, I told a bit about my poems and how I write them, where my ideas come from, and so forth. But today, I will be discussing the history of my poetry and how it all began. As a little girl, I never started out wanting to be a poet or started out really wanting to write poetry, and I didn't read poetry as a little girl unless it was in school that we had to read different poems or something, but I never started out wanting to write poetry or to be a poet. But my first poem I wrote, I was age 9, and I don't really remember why I wrote it, and I don't remember writing it now, but I have it. Some of my very early poems. I'm gonna share with you in just a few minutes. But as in elementary school, I remember learning how to write, to handwrite, and it was very, very difficult for me learning to print. And cursive was even harder for me to write. So I didn't really like writing at first. But as I got older, and of course now probably girls are into the texting. But when I was in elementary and junior high, the big thing was writing notes. And we would use different color pens, and we would fold the paper differently for each friend. I would fold the paper like different for each friend, and it was a lot of fun. And after I got to write where you could read it, because I remember very young, I would watch. There was a show on TV called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and I remember I actually wrote him a letter, and I remember he wrote back, probably because they had somebody write back to all of the kids that wrote him, and he commented about how he saw that I was just learning how to write, and he was it was a very encouraging letter to me, but I did not write very well I don't know how old I was when I really started writing, but it was not pretty when I first started out physically handwriting. But I always enjoyed writing in general, and I loved writing notes to my friends at school. And I also love writing letters to my grandmothers, after that, I loved writing and telling people, my grandmothers especially, what was happening and being descriptive and talking a lot about what was going on in my life. I would also make handmade cards, and I would also write the verses in the cards. And for a lot of my first poems were verses that I wrote for a card to give to a friend. And I grew up in public school, so my friends, you're there Monday through Friday from 8 to 3:30. And so you're around them more than anybody else. And so your friends are vitally important to you when you're younger. And I didn't want to just give them a store-bought card. I always wanted to make a card, and I would always write a poem to put in it to give them. And that seemed more personal than just giving them a store-bought card. So I always loved making my own cards. And I continued to write on and off during my years in elementary and in junior high. Not regularly, or because I wanted to, just something hit me, and I would write mostly in cards to friends and so forth. But I didn't ever sit down and, okay, I'm going to try to write a poem today kind of thing. And after I got in high school, I wrote several poems that I had to write as assignments for class. And I will never forget how my teachers' reactions were. And there was one of my teachers who, she was very abrupt, and she didn't really smile all the time, and she was kind, I guess, but she wasn't like my favorite teacher. There were teachers I would go to school and I would go hug them every time I saw them, and they were very sweet and loving. This woman was not, but I will never forget when I came to school and she called me out in front of the whole class and said, Jeralyn, I would like for you to, read your poem for the class. And I was horrified because I'm like, it was just put me on the spot. But she was not also one that I was very surprised, but she would go on and on bragging about my poem. And so it was kind of wild to me that she would do that. And there was another teacher that after I turned in one of my poems, she asked me to give her, she was being really silly, but she asked me to give her my autograph. And I was like, why? And she said, so I can say that I knew you when. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, because Jeralyn, she says, you need to keep writing because you have been given a gift. And she's probably the first one that anybody told me, Jeralyn, you've been given a gift of anything. But I was like, okay, these were, it was nice for me to get these attagirls from these teachers, but it was also very strange to me because Jeralyn is not one that, I'm not shy, but I'm also not one to stand up in a crowd and talk. I'm usually the girl back in the back of the library reading a book, and that's probably where you would find me in high school. And so it was very strange to me to hear these praises from these teachers, but I will never forget them either. And I always remembered what they said to me about to keep writing. But it made me feel good that they liked my poems and that other kids in school, they would say things and they liked them too. And I remember in church I was at, and when I was in high school, the preacher asked if he could put one of my poems in the church bulletin. And I was very, very excited about that because the church bulletin had all the information in it. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. Then people can read my poem, along with all the announcements and everything. And there was a lot of people who would come up to me. I got a lot of nice feedback from them about how they loved my poems. And so again, it was really some people I knew that I'd known forever. And there was a lot of people I didn't know. And the people I didn't know, I guess, had more of an impact on me because the people I did know, I'm like, okay, of course they're going to say they like it because they know me and they want to encourage me and whatever. But the people I didn't know, it was really, they were very, they were really wanting me to know that they really liked whatever the poem was at the time. And I was like, okay. So I paid attention again, and I just always kept that at the back of my mind. I was like, okay, this is nice. But I continued to write different poems through high school and as I entered college. In college, the poems that I wrote mostly were for babies in my class because I was very active in the church, in more than one church when I was in college. And I was a nursery worker, I was a teacher, I was anything that had to do with the church nursery, I was there. And all of these babies, I also babysat as well. And so I wrote so many poems for these babies because they are just very, very much in my heart because I didn't just babysit them. When they were in my care, they were my babies. And all these poems came out in about all these sweet, precious babies that I was allowed to care for. And in fact, there was one summer when I was on my summer vacation, I went back to the city where I was in college, and I taught at 3 different churches because they needed somebody to teach their babies for vacation Bible school. So that was a huge treat for me to get to go back and do that. And again, there are so many that I wrote for these precious, precious babies. And then after I met my husband, Ben, he became the main subject of my writing very not surprisingly. And so I wrote quite a few for him while we were dating, and various things. Here and there, I would write just something hit me. I would write a poem about it. And then there were a lot of people who would come to me, and a friend, her grandmother had passed away, and she asked me if I could write a poem for her grandmother so that they could read at her services. And I was very surprised, but I'm like, oh, okay. So I wrote her a poem. And also, being in the nursery, being a nursery teacher for so many years, there's also precious, precious babies that have passed away as infants. And I've written many, many memorial poems for those babies so that their families have something to remember them by. And I have so many poems for babies that are in heaven now. And then there was a friend that her niece passed away, and I wrote a poem for her. And I have this in my notes, but I'm thinking that this isn't correct. But I have written most of my poems after I became a mom, when I had my own baby. I think I wrote more poems for my son Timothy than anybody else. And when I look back, I'm just like, wow, there are so many poems that I wrote for him when I was pregnant and after he was born. And I did write a lot for my youngest son too, but there are far less because I didn't have as much time. But I do think that Timothy, I've written so many poems. He probably has not even read them all, to be honest. And but I wrote so many for him. But now that I look back, I'm kind of going through my poems now, getting ready to get a bunch of them together to make a love poem book. And there are poems that I've written to my husband Ben that I totally forgot about. And so there's so many to go through. So who knows who? Probably Ben has more poems written for him. And other than that, Jesus is the poems that I've probably written more about Jesus than anybody. All of them put together. A couple of years ago, I started a huge task of typing up all of my old poems and putting them in some sort of order so that I could find them, which has been really hard to do. But my poems I put in sheet protectors and many 3-ring binders. But all of them, when I first started going through them, they were all in a big plastic tub, just thrown in there, all together, not in any order, and they were sadly neglected for a long time. As a homeschooling mother, I was so busy teaching and taking the boys to all of their activities, and the last thing that I had time or energy for was going through that big plastic bin. But it was always there, and I always intended to go through it. And I finally did. And I'm so happy now saying that it is behind me, because it was huge. Because there were some that had a whole bunch of copies of the same poem, and there were so many that I couldn't read the writing. It was just horrible. It was very difficult. It was fun kind of in a way, but it was hard kind of in a way. But it was also wonderful because I felt like I was getting reacquainted with some old friends, because there were so many that I was like, oh, I remember writing that. And as I was reading these, and then there were so many that I did not remember writing at all. And, but it was fun. It was really fun to sit down and just read them all. And it was mind-blowing how many of them there were. And all my childhood ones that I had, they were not dated, because little Jeralyn didn't think that she would need to probably put dates on anything. but I had go through the hard task of guessing how old I was when I wrote, because that's how I have my poems now, is by date. And my younger ones, I figured out that I was probably 8 or 9, my first poems, because when I saw them, they were not written in cursive. And I think I started writing cursive at the age of 10, so that's how I based the age on them, because I don't have any other way to put an age on them, so I just kind of guessed. And in 2019, after going through some difficult times, as well as some close friends and dear friends going through some hard times, this is before 2020 happened, I started to write poems geared more toward getting through these hard times. Because before I had done, okay, for birthdays and for someone after they had passed, as a remembrance for someone, and for all these precious babies, and for Ben, but I started gearing toward, okay, these hard times, who do we seek during these times? How do we get through these hard times? And that everything would go back to Jesus. And so I wrote, he was the main focus of my new poems when I started to write in 2019 again. And we had an email, I guess, list with our class at church. And there was a lady that anybody that had prayer requests would send them to her, and she would just put out an email list. And I shared some of my poems with her, and she started putting those out on our class email list. And it was amazing how people would come up to me that I didn't know and telling me how much my poems meant to them. And some who were super shy, that I remember seeing them in class, but I didn't really know them. But they would bridge that gap and overcame their shyness to come up to me and tell me just how special this poem was or that poem was. And it was just it just meant a lot to me that that my words were able to touch them and help them in some way. And everybody kept telling me, oh, please keep writing, keep writing. And so I'm like, okay. And that's something I've heard all my life since I was a little girl, from teachers telling me to keep writing and that my poems meant something to them. And so I prayed over this many times, and I told Daddy, which I refer to God as my daddy. He's my Abba. And so I always refer to him as my daddy. If you read any of my poems, that's who I'm talking about. And I told Daddy that if he wished for me to be his instrument, that I would write down everything that he gave for me to write. And I meant that so much with my whole heart. And he answered, and the floodgates opened big, very, very big. And since 2020, I have written almost 500 poems, nearly 700 all together, because I had a little over 200 of my childhood up through my early married time of poems where I wrote. I mean, on our website, the EPK video, it says that I've written over 500, but I've written almost 200 poems since then, and that's less than a year ago I think it was July of last year, so that's less than a year ago that we did that. That's just almost 200 poems since then, but nearly 700 all together. And yeah, he's giving them to me like crazy. I am still writing every single day as he gives them to me. I keep a pad of one of those little mead pads of paper, the smaller ones. I have one in my purse. I have one in the living room if we're watching a movie. I have one with me in the bedroom. I have one in my office. I have one with me here right now. It's in my purse. And I keep it with me at all times. And if I'm outside, it doesn't matter if I'm at the grocery store. I have that pad of paper with me and a pens at all times, and I write down everything. And it is amazing how many poems and how many of those little notebooks I've used up, because I always handwrite them in these little notebooks. And then I have my system down now, because no more plastic bins that they're getting thrown in. So I write them, and then after I write it, it's pretty messy. So I type it up, because I can type now very, very good by myself. And I type it up, and I put extra copies that I put into a file, and then I put one copy in a sheet protector and a 3-ring binder. And my 3-ring binders, my childhood poems, I had a little over I think 204 in one of those 3-ring binders, and that is very heavy. So I decided I just need 100 per 3-ring binder. So that's what I've done since then, and what I'll continue to do. And I just have them by date, because even alphabetical order, it's too hard to find, because there's just too many of them. Anyway, but I'm glad that I have a system now that works for me, so that after I write it, get it typed up, and get it filed and put in the main book, and then go on to my next one. And the majority of these are about Jesus and his love for us, and about overcoming these hard times and the joy that we experience in a relationship with him. And I have brought some of my old, so I'm going to read my very first poem. I never feel more like me than when I'm writing. And I feel he's been teaching me this from a very young age, to be his instrument in this way. This is his gift. He gives special gifts to each one of us. And I feel this is his very special gift that he's given to me. And there is no feeling like being used by him. It is clearly to me one of the most wonderful feelings in the world. There's just no feeling. I just feel whole, like I'm doing what he created me to do. And it just feels wonderful. And days that I don't get to write, I get kind of cranky. All right, so I'm going to read some of my poems, and these are all very, very old poems, and they're very sweet. But these are just a few that I picked out really quick when I was going through it this week. And I'll just start with the first one right here. This is Jeralyn, age 9. This is my very first poem. I may have written poems before this, I don't know, but this is the oldest one that I had, because I couldn't. There's 2 when I was 9 that I brought. This world so beautiful, untouched by human hands, but one touch ruined everything. Now this world so full of sin, so touched by human hands, but the beauty is still visibly seen. We are to love, not hate, laugh, not cry, comfort, not provoke. But even more beautiful than the birds that soar in the sky, the grass as it spurts up out of the ground, the flowers blooming in spring, is the Creator. How I long for the day when I shall see him face to face. And that is my very first poem. So that will always be very special to me. And I do still long for the day when I shall see him face to face. So that has not changed at all. And here's another, age 9, my Lord. A hand in a time of need, to pick up my petals as they fall to the ground, to hold me in mine hour of trial. For happiness, you help me to find it and to have it always. Loneliness, to overcome it. Death, to live with it. Oh, where would I be without you, my Lord? And that's another one. I guess I thought of myself as a flower to pick up my petals. I don't know, that was really sweet. I guess I thought of myself as a little flower as a little girl. Because age 9, I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I've had a 9-year-old. So I don't know like what grade you would be in at age 9. But anyway, those are sweet. This one, I was 10. And this is what love is according to 10-year-old little Jeralyn. Love is rainbows. It's helping others when they are feeling low. Love is being friendly to someone you don't know, giving them a smile and saying hello. Love is climbing a tree. It's standing at the door and watching you leave. Love is being a friend. It's never letting the good things end. Love is the beginning and the start, and love forever lives in your heart. And this is really sweet, but I don't remember writing this one. But when I talk about it standing in the door and watching you leave, and if you know me, whenever you leave, if you're in my home or wherever, I always will stand there and wave as you leave. It's a big thing that I do, and it's really it really tickled me to read that in this, because I was 10 when I did this, but I've always done that. You always stand at the door and you always wave until they're out of your sight. It's always been something that I've done. And climbing a tree. Love is climbing a tree. That got to me because I loved climbing trees as a little girl. Not so much now. But that was really sweet. And here's another one when I was 10. My dream world. Everything is perfect in this dream world of mine. The flowers never wilt. The grass is always green. The leaves on the trees are just right. No one has ever heard of being sick. You don't need to study, for you already know everything. Everybody likes everybody. No one is ever left out. No one fights or gripes. The streets are paved with gold, the houses lined with silver. There is always someone there when you need them. There is no sadness in my dream world, only fun-filled days full of smiles. You always feel loved. Everybody is somebody. I can't wait for the day when I won't need my dream world anymore, for then I'll be in heaven. Oh. And isn't that, though, I love that. I just love that. But I've always loved nature, and it comes out, even as a young child. I always talked about it then, too, and I didn't realize that. And there's so many of my poems talking about smiling, and I think it's very interesting that I married a man with the last name Smiley. That's just really cool when I look at all these poems. And this one is Jeralyn, age 12. Helping others makes me smile. Making people smile gives me all my joys, for it doesn't matter if it is a girl or a boy. For I have a love for everyone I see. I wish everyone's happiness could always be. I put myself in their place, and deep within my heart, I feel for them as I would have, for I guess that's a great start. I love to help people with their fears, hoping that their problems soon will disappear. Some are really so scared and all they do is cry. Sometimes I can't help, but I really have to try. It is really hard to believe how some can be so down. Their faces are so sad, and it really makes me frown. When friends ask for help, I tell them to come right in. I really try to show them that they can really win. When I am depressed and really down and sad, I think of happy smiling faces, and it makes me glad. Oh, little Jeralyn. But I have to add to that Jeralyn needs to, it is nice to be there for other people, but we also need to love and be there for ourselves too, and not just give everything to everybody, which is what mostly I did, till you drain yourself and then there's nothing left. We need to give to ourselves too. I've probably written many about that already as well. And this is another one, age 12. And this is my saying that whenever I wrote my notes to my girlfriends in elementary school, the thing I would always put, sometimes when you write sincerely or hope you're doing well or what, at the end of a note, I would always put keep smiling. Always. That was my little saying that I always put. I dream of a place where love is, where strength is leaned on, where needs are met. I dream of stars that sparkle in the moonlight, the sun shining bright, the glorious scent of flowers. I dream of happy smiling faces, doing good deeds for others, filling people's hearts with joy. But most of all, I dream of making people happy and keeping them that way. That age 12 little Jeralyn. It's another one. And this is when I was 13. This is the last one I'll read for now. And this one is titled God. When you're at the bottom, He will take you to the top. When you're blinded by darkness, He will open your eyes so that you can see the light. When you're in doubt, He will give you faith. When you are going through hard times, He will carry you through them. When your heart is weary, He will hold your hand. When your golden moments are all gone, He will let you wear His crown. When your life looks all downhill, He will let you slide up the rainbow, up into the sky. When your day turns out to be sorrowful, He will give you courage. When you are sad, He will paint a smile upon your face. When you are lost, He will take you home. When you're all alone, He will be there for you. When you are tired, He will let you rest on a cloud. It's another sweet one. So I wrote about my friends, but I also wrote quite a few about God as well, as I see. And I hope that you've enjoyed hearing those. I enjoyed getting those together because I read a bunch of my old ones that I hadn't read in a while. These early ones are really fun for me to go back and read and see how much that I still agree with little Jeralyn on a lot of things. It is neat to see that my young poems were a lot about Jesus as well, and His love for us and overcoming hard times and the joy we experience in a relationship with Him. And in James, he does talk about how we're supposed to count it all joy when we encounter trials, which I don't know about you, but that's kind of a hard thing because when I'm going through something, I don't want to be joyful about it. But there are so many times I think, would I be leaning on Him as hard as I am now if I hadn't gone through this, if I'm not going through this, would I be just hanging and staying so close to him? And the answer is probably not. So there is a reason why we're supposed to count it all joy in everything. And the relationship that we have with Jesus, you do not get, I did not get, by sitting in a pew every Sunday. And then after the church is over, going out to eat. And then you go home and you go on with your life and you don't think about him again until maybe next Sunday. And then you're back in church again. And it's like, that is not the kind of relationship I'm talking about that I have with him. But a true relationship, a real relationship. The one where when you wake up in the morning and you realize, okay, I'm still here, he is your first thought and the first one that you want to go to, that you want to tell him, wish him good morning. Thank you for seeing me through the night and for being with here and waiting for me as I wake up this morning. And at night before you go to bed, he is the last thought that you have when you lay down. And you thank him for, when I lay my head down on my pillow, the first thing I do is go through the day. And it's this trial or this thing or this thing. And I thank him for every single thing that I went through, that he gave me the strength to finish doing this, or the wisdom to not do that, or the courage to do something. It is amazing to me how he is there for me every step of the way. I am never alone, ever. And in the struggles, he is the first one that we should go to. Because there's so many times where I see people going through something really tough, and the first thing they do is they'll go to their friends or their family, and you just cannot find true support unless you go to him. People can be there, but it's not the same. If we go to Jesus first, we always need to go to him first through every struggle, through everything that we go through. And there was a movie that we just saw a couple months ago, and I don't remember the part of the movie, but the guy in the movie was having the best day of his life. And he was able to, I can't even remember the storyline, but in the end, something miraculously wonderful happened to him. And it was like everybody was all congratulating, everybody was all happy, and everybody went home to their families. And he was left all alone with this incredible thing that just happened to him. But yet it's like there was nobody to share it with. And I think he and his wife were separated at the time. And after, my boys, they're going to remind me of the whole movie thing. They're going to remind me of everything about this movie later, but I can't remember about it right now. But he was separated, I think, from his wife, and he was like, he didn't have anybody to celebrate it with, to share it with. So guess what? He hopped on the plane and he went straight to where his wife was. She was living with her sister, and they were reconciled, and it was a big thing at the end of the movie. But it was like he had nobody to celebrate it with. It was a wonderful, happy, and Jesus, he wants to be that person that we celebrate our happy stuff with. He's not just there during the trials and struggles. He is there for all of the joys as well. And there's quite a lot of the joys that he gives us. A lot of it we just going through life and we aren't paying attention. But he is right there with all of the joys too. But he is there through all of it. He wants to share everything with us. He is there when things are just not happening that we want to be happening, and that we don't understand maybe why something is happening. When we feel despair, and when we are tired, when we are weary, Jesus is there. He is always there, and he will always be there. And I'll say that again. He will always be there. Because there's many in my life that I have loved that have absolutely abandoned me. And Jesus will never abandon you. He will always be there for you. You don't have to ever worry about that. We could never, ever exhaust his love for us. Ever. And he will never get tired of us. And he will never go away. He will never tell you to hush. Or he will never be too busy for you. And he will always stand up for us and fight for us. And he will not forget something that he knows is something is important to us. He's not going to forget that. He's going to remember that. He finds us in our troubles, and we grow in him through our struggles. He is amazing, and he is our beloved Savior. And he has loved us from the beginning, and he will love us forever. He grants us forgiveness. He grants us healing, and he grants us his everlasting love. And I really pray that through my poetry that I can help others to see that they can have this relationship with Jesus, that he's not just some guy on a flannel board in a Bible class that you remember from years ago that you didn't know, but you do. Jesus knows you, and he wants you to know him in an intimate way, and he wants to be there for you, and he wants to love you. So we just need to let him love us and let us know him, because it's a life-changing thing. It changes makes your trials not as bad, the pain not as bad, and it makes the joys just that much more joyful with Jesus in it. And that is my story of my poetry. My love for Jesus that I cannot keep to myself. It just pours over in words, and I love being his instrument, that he gives me all of these words to put in a way that hopefully will help others get to know him better too, the way that I do. And I hope that you feel blessed that I'm sharing all my poems with you, and that I'm sharing all these with you. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.